In this world, monsters are not legends. They emerge from fractures in reality, invisible gates that open between dimensions. When that happens, the military is usually too late, and heroes aren't always nearby. But there is always one name people whisper when the darkness begins to spread: Raven Thorn. That night, the border town of Grimvale fell into chaos. A colossal monster taller than the old cathedral was tearing through the streets. Artillery couldn't slow it down. Tanks were tossed aside like toys. The townspeople could only run. Then, through the smoke and fire, a lone figure stepped out onto the shattered road. A woman wearing a monster hunter's coat that reached her knees. Slung over her shoulder was a silver rifle engraved with ancient runes. And in the palm of her right hand, a red stone glowed like a beating heart. The monster roared, shaking the ground beneath it. The woman simply sighed. Another one. She raised the rifle as the red light from the stone spread along her arm like burning veins. Her name was Raven Thorn. And if there was one person in this world born to hunt monsters, it was her. Raven Thorn's gunshot tore through the night of Grimvale. A surge of crimson energy blasted straight into the massive monster, making it roar in agony before collapsing into the rubble. One by one, the townspeople emerged from their hiding places, staring at the strange woman who had just saved them, grateful, yet afraid. But Raven didn't stay to accept their thanks. She turned and walked away just like she always did. Because to Raven, killing monsters had never been something to be proud of. It was simply a job she never truly chose. Raven was the daughter of Darius Thorn, a legendary monster hunter, who once made the world tremble. Centuries ago, Darius discovered a meteorite containing an ancient crystal known as the Red Core. The stone granted him extraordinary power, an unnaturally long life, and the ability to destroy creatures that did not belong to this world. But that power came with a price. Darius believed the world would always need a hunter. And to ensure that, he raised Raven not as a daughter, but as the perfect heir to the Red Core. From the time she was a child, Raven was thrown into battles no child should ever have to face. Monsters, blood, survival. Those were the only lessons she ever learned. And even though Darius Thorn had been dead for many years, his shadow had never truly left Raven's life. Raven had barely left Grimvale when the old communicator in her coat pocket began to vibrate. The device had only one frequency, and only one organization in the world knew how to reach it. Raven stopped on the empty dirt road as the lights of the town faded behind her. She had tried to stay away from them for years, but whenever the worst things appeared, they always found her. A rough voice crackled through the device. Raven Thorn. We need you. She sighed. You always do. This time it wasn't a wandering monster or a small rift between dimensions. According to Iron Order's report, an ancient creature was awakening beneath the city of Grimvale, something too large, too dangerous for a lone hunter to handle. They had assembled a special task force. Names Raven had never wanted to work with. Atlas, a half-man, half-machine warrior. Mira Sol, a mage who could command light. Boomer, a demolitions man who loved explosives more than thinking. And someone who only called himself captain. A chaotic group. But Raven knew one thing. If Iron Order had to gather all of those dangerous people at once, then whatever was awakening underground was not just an ordinary monster. She looked down at the glowing red stone in the palm of her hand. A cold feeling crept down her spine. This time, the hunt might not be like any hunt before. The hunt began in the ancient tunnels deep beneath Grimvale. Raven and the Iron Order task force moved through stone corridors that had been abandoned for centuries. The air underground was thick with the smell of metal, and something worse, the scent of monsters. But the deeper they went, the more Raven realized something was wrong. The traces they found didn't look like those of an ancient creature that had just awakened. The cuts along the stone walls were too clean. The magical symbols etched into the floor looked freshly carved. Atlas was the first to notice. These aren't monster markings, he said, sweeping his scanner across the wall. This is experimental equipment. They pushed further in. Then the massive steel door opened. Inside was not a monster's lair. It was a secret laboratory. Dozens of twisted creatures floated inside glass containment tanks. Artificial dimensional gates flickered half open. And at the center of the room stood a massive machine designed to replicate the energy of the Red Core. Raven froze. Boomer let out a dry laugh. So, we're not hunting monsters. Mirasol stared at the streams of data scrolling across a screen. No, she said slowly. We're standing inside the factory that creates them. And in the corner of the room, Raven saw a symbol carved into the wall. A symbol she knew all too well. The emblem of Iron Order. In that moment Raven understood. The monster they had been sent to hunt had never been the real target. The laboratory fell into a heavy silence after the truth was revealed. Raven stood among dozens of glass tanks holding twisted creatures, the very monsters she had spent her entire life hunting. But now, seeing them confined and suspended in containment, she realized something more terrifying than any monster she had ever faced. They didn't appear naturally. They were created. Atlas quickly accessed the lab's data system. Streams of information ran across the screen and his expression darkened. This is a biological research program, running for more than 30 years. Mira's soul glanced at Raven. 30 years. That means it started during your father's time. The words made Raven freeze. She stepped toward the screen. An old file appeared on the central monitor, the lead researcher of the program's first phase. Darius Thorne. Raven's chest tightened. Not only had her father been the legendary monster hunter, he had also helped create them. Boomer slammed his hand against a metal table. So what was this whole war then? Some sick loop? Raven didn't answer. Fragments of her childhood memories suddenly resurfaced. Brutal training sessions, monsters that appeared at the perfect time, missions her father somehow always seemed to anticipate. A horrifying thought slowly formed in her mind. If her father had created the monsters, then maybe Raven Thorne had never been the one chosen to destroy them. She had simply been part of the experiment. No one in the room said another word. The truth that had just been revealed felt like a crack opening beneath their feet. Raven still stood in front of the data screen, the cold blue light reflecting across her expressionless face. Then the entire laboratory shook. A deep guttural roar echoed from somewhere far below the ground. Atlas glanced at the control panel. Something just activated. The glass tanks began to crack. The creatures inside jerked violently, as if they were all waking at the same time. Mira's soul turned to Raven. We need to get out of here now. Her words were cut off when the massive steel door behind them was torn apart from the outside. A gigantic shadow stepped through. Not a monster. Not completely. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body twisted by blazing red energy flowing through its veins like molten lava. On its chest, several shards of red crystal fused together into a warped, unstable core. Raven felt her heart stop. That face, even though it was distorted, she still recognized it. Darius Thorne. Her father. But the thing standing before them was no longer human. Raven, his distorted voice scraped through the air like grinding metal. In the next instant, he lunged forward. No one had time to react. A single blow sent Raven crashing hard into the stone wall. Before she could stand, Darius had already seized her right arm, the one where the red core glowed. A sharp crack echoed through the room. Pain exploded through her body. And Raven realized the most horrifying truth of all. She could not win this fight. The pain blurred everything in Raven's vision. She lay motionless among the ruins of the laboratory. Blood ran down her torn right arm. Where the red core once glowed, there was now only a burning emptiness. Monster energy began seeping into her body like a cold poison. Across the chamber, Darius Thorne, or rather the thing that had once been Darius, was absorbing more red crystal fragments from the experimental machine. The energy surrounding him grew more violent by the second, strong enough to tear the entire room apart. Atlas and Mira's soul tried to drag Raven away from the battlefield, but she pushed them back. No, don't. Her voice was hoarse, but something in her eyes had changed. Raven looked down at the laboratory floor. Scattered across it were shattered fragments of the red core left behind by the explosion moments earlier. An idea flashed through her mind. She crawled forward and picked up one of the crystal shards. The moment it touched her skin, red energy surged through her wounded arm like fire. The pain was almost enough to make her black out, but Raven didn't let go. She grabbed another shard, then another. The red crystals began to fuse together around her missing arm, forming a new structure, rough, glowing, and pulsing with power. A red core arm. Slowly, Raven rose to her feet. Crimson light burned in the palm of her new hand. For the first time since the battle began, Darius Thorne stopped and looked at his daughter with something close to caution. The hunt wasn't over yet. The crimson light from Raven's new red core arm ignited like a living flame. The entire laboratory trembled as two identical sources of power collided. Darius Thorne roared, his body erupting with red crystal shards embedded across his chest. He charged forward with terrifying speed, each step cracking the stone floor beneath him. But this time, Raven didn't step back. She clenched her newly formed red core arm as energy surged through her body like burning veins. Father and daughter collided. Violent waves of red energy slammed into each other, blasting equipment apart and shattering the remaining glass tanks. The creatures in the laboratory screamed as the unstable power spiraled out of control. Darius threw his final strike. Raven blocked it. For a brief moment she looked directly into her father's distorted eyes. I won't become you. She channeled every ounce of red core energy into her new arm and unleashed a massive surge of power. Crimson light swallowed the entire chamber. When the light finally faded, the monster gates had collapsed. Darius's body disintegrated along with the unstable red core energy. Silence. Raven stood in the ruins, her red crystal arm still glowing faintly. She was no longer her father's weapon, nor the legend he tried to create. She was simply Raven Thorne Monster Hunter. And her hunt was far from over. If you want to see Raven face an even greater monstrous force in the next part, comment 1.